Hey, Amazon sellers. I want to share something that can completely change the way you run your business. For the last decade, I've built a world-class Amazon team that's helped me sell over $50 million on the platform and scale multiple seven-figure brands. Now, that same team and process is available to help you build, grow, and scale your Amazon business. This is not a course. It's not a DIY program. It's done for you Amazon growth handled by proven experts. We handle everything from listing optimization and SEO to PPC, inventory, catalog management, promotions, review strategy, compliance, and new product launches. So you can focus on running your business while we handle the rest. If you're ready to turn your Amazon channel into a profit machine, visit the link in the show notes, calendly.com/firingtheman/Amazon, and book a time to see if this is a good fit for you.
Welcome everyone to the Firing the Man podcast, a show for anyone who wants to be their own boss. If you sit in a cubicle every day and know you are capable of more, then join us. This show will help you build a business and grow your passive income streams in just a few short hours per day. And now your hosts, serial entrepreneurs David Schomer and Ken Wilson.
Welcome to the Firing the Man podcast. Today on the show, we're joined by Lissa Fryxell, a powerhouse from Easy Pay Direct, the payment processing platform that helps entrepreneurs scale without the usual bottlenecks. Lissa has worked with countless business owners to simplify payments, reduce risk, and unlock smoother cash flow, which is the lifeblood of any growing business. In this conversation, we're going to dig into the real challenges brands face with payment processing, how to set yourself up for scalability, and why choosing the right partner can make or break your growth strategy. If you've ever felt the headache of chargebacks, payment holds, or wondering how to future-proof your checkout, this is an episode you'll definitely want to stick around for. Lissa, very excited to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, David. I'm thrilled to be here.
Absolutely. So to start things off, can you share with our audience a little bit about your background and path in the payment processing world?
Oh, do we want to put him to sleep already?
No, I start here. I've heard it before and I love it. So here we go.
So I have been in payments for 29 years. It started a gazillion years ago. I was working for a software reseller. And First Data, which is has been through many evolutions since then, was our partner, and I won it was like a triple diamond award, blah blah blah. And they sent me to Florida to collect an award and meet the First Data folks, which I did, and they wooed me over into payments, and for the most part, I've been here ever since.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Very nice. And to talking to our e-commerce audience, very simply, what is a payment processor? That I remember one of the first times that I talked to you, I have my own website where I have direct to consumer sales. And I was like, who's my payment processor? And so what is it and what function are they serving?
Well, honestly, as the days tick on, that answer becomes bigger and bigger. But the essence of what we do is we move money. We move it from your customer's checking account, credit line, whatever the case may be, into your account, into your checking account.
Okay. And when this is not handled properly, and I'm sure you probably have some horror stories of clients that have come to Easy Pay Direct who have had issues, what can happen if this is not handled properly?
Ooh, well, it can get, frankly, David, it can get really ugly. There have been a number of cases, and I'm sure most of your audience has probably Googled this at one point or another. They have heard stories about funds being held and merchant accounts being shut down without warning. And, quite literally, that happens every day. It could be happening right now. And, imagine as a business owner, if you lost cash flow just with no warning, just instantly, poof, all of a sudden you're cruising along, taking cards, your business is flowing beautifully, and then all of a sudden you're not. What would that do to your business, right? I mean, in some cases, it shuts people down. It forces them to seek other means of revenue in the interim until they can find somebody and get back up and running. In some cases, it just puts a delay on being able to pay payroll or, pay suppliers. And it can have a number of effects across the scale, from catastrophic to, ridiculously irritating, but can manage it.
Mm-hmm. Now, when I think of funds being frozen, and prior to talking to you, I often would have thought, well, that person must be doing something illegal, or they must be doing something wrong, and that is why their funds are frozen. And what I learned is that is not always the case. And so can you talk about some of the reasons why payments would be frozen? And yeah, can you talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. So there are, in essence, two different kinds of merchant accounts. There is an aggregator merchant account. So like the Stripes, the Squares, the PayPals, et cetera. Those folks are aggregators. And what that means to be an aggregator is that they have one parent account, one mother account, whatever you want to call it. And everybody that they sign up as their client, they move money for, has a portion of that merchant account. They don't have their own. They're a child under that mother account. And some of the challenges related to that, and this is often when you hear about funds being held or accounts being shut down, is that your behavior plays a role, but also your industry behavior. So your behavior could be any anomaly. So for instance, a while ago, I had a plumber, literally just your average plumber, ran a couple transactions a day, $800,000 on average. And then he did a job for a hotel. And that job, they wrapped it up, he and his team. That job said, can I put this on a P card, on a purchase card? And he didn't know. So he was like, sure. And he happened to have been with an aggregator, and he ran the transaction, $93,000 and change. He ran it. He got an approval code, thought he was good. The next morning, no money, account closed. He didn't do a single thing wrong. Like the hotel was happy. There was no fraud. There was no challenge with the dollar amount. Like nothing was wrong with it. And so long story short, I met him because he came into my banking partner asking for a loan because he had payroll to make. He had suppliers to pay, right? And he was short 93 G's, which, for a small operation is a lot of money. And so, we ended up helping him, but it took him threatening legal action, beginning legal action, and waiting 13 months to get those funds. And, that is not an uncommon situation. The problem is the guy didn't do anything wrong, and he didn't know, right? He didn't know that that's how aggregators work. If there's any anomaly, good, bad, or otherwise, in your behavior, in your processing volume, in, up or down, right? They become suspicious and they just shut it down. There's no waiting a couple days, seeing if there was an issue with the transaction. It's just a shutdown. Conversely, it could be an industry situation where, especially in high risk space, like let's just say you're a CBD merchant and heaven forbid something traumatic happens in the news related to CBD. The aggregators are going to sweep through their portfolio and shut down anybody in that industry because they're afraid, right? It's just a fear-based reaction. You could have been a merchant who was processing beautifully for years and years and years, but because you're in that industry, closed.
Okay. That's really good to hear. And the story about the plumber really illustrates a situation where bad things happen to good people who are doing the right thing, and that would cripple almost any small business. And so, this is a really, really important topic. What are some of the misconceptions that people have about payment processing?
I think there are two that I see almost constantly. The first is it's all about rate. I just want to know what's my rate. Just tell me what my rate is. That's all I care about. I'm going to find whoever is the cheapest, and that's going to be my decision. The second is merchant services is only an expense. It doesn't benefit me. It's a cost item, in my ledger, and it ends there. Both of those things couldn't be less true. So let's start with it's all about rate. What happens if you have a question, your deposit's off, from what you expected it to be, and you have a question and you have to sit on hold for 3 hours waiting for someone's attention? What happens if you're missing a deposit and nobody can help you reconcile, right? So there are a number of things to consider outside of rate. Firstly, think about what products do you sell and which provider is the best fit. Here's the truth. And, it pains me a little bit to say this, but it's true. If you are a retail merchant, which means you are taking physical cards from your customer and your average ticket is relatively small, under $100, the aggregators do a pretty darn good job, to be honest, right? Like you're at low risk for being shut down unless you have any, spikes or dips that are significant. But they do a pretty good job. If you are outside of that sort of box of retail with a small ticket, they are not the best fit because your volume could vary, right? Significantly, it could vary because they don't have ancillary products that benefit you. Like they don't have, a chargeback product. They don't have a front end product. They don't have the ability to engage with a number of different shopping carts if you change your mind or if your business grows and you're looking to scale and change your back end products. So there's a lot of things to consider in terms of, who is the best fit for me outside of just tell me the rate. Secondly, it's only an expense. That one couldn't be less true. There are ways that merchant service companies benefit your business that help you drive business and drive revenue. For instance, is it simple inside their platform to upsell or cross-sell, right? Or there are some options now. A lot of people are adding buy now, pay later, which is terrific for some merchants, but also that process pulls your customer away from your site to go to a buy now, pay later site to sort of finish that process and then brings you back, eliminating the opportunity for a cross or upsell right at purchase. So you have to think about and weigh your options. Are you at a high average ticket and it makes more sense for you to let them move to a buy now, pay later? Are you at a place where buy now, pay later isn't as important as a cross or upsell? Can you still get that cross or upsell later in your buyer's journey? So, there's so many things to consider that ultimately what you want is to have a meaningful conversation with whomever you're looking at as your payments provider and ask those kinds of questions. If I'm looking to scale, how can I scale with you, right? What are some benefits or products that you offer outside of just being able to move money that would be important to my business? And ask the questions. Think about what your needs are right now and think about your trajectory and where you expect to go and what you anticipate your needs will be then. And can that provider help you with both?
Okay. I'd like to dive into the scaling piece of it a little bit more. And I've heard you talk about Easy Pay Direct and scaling without fear. Mm-hmm. What does that mean in practice? And for the entrepreneur, what should they be thinking about when they're thinking about scaling?
Sure. So frankly, it starts with what I just said. Think about your buyer's journey. Look at from them selecting a product or products, moving it to a shopping cart, and then where do you want them to go? Do you want them to think about ancillary products? Do you want them to think about a bigger package than what you currently offer? Do you want them to think about a subscription or a membership? What really are the benefits of your buyer's journey, and how are you communicating those? And then how does that process happen inside your technology? Is it frictionless? Is it a seamless process for your buyer to select products and then go to the checkout and then maybe say, oh yeah, it's smarter for me to just pay for this via subscription, and then it happens automatically every month and I don't have to fuss with it. It's one less thing I have to think about. Or do you want them to, maybe select a bigger package that is a much bigger average ticket, right? So more revenue for you up front, but then maybe moves them out of your process and then back into your process. So what are your goals? What are your goals for your business? What does your growth trajectory look like? And how do you get there? And then allow that process to manifest inside your payments. I mean, there's more than just payments, but from a payments person, think about it from a payments perspective, because you can look at year over year, just if you add a cross-sell opportunity or an upsell opportunity or a larger ticket or a membership or a subscription, you can literally look at how your revenue balloons. And if you don't offer those options, do you stay flat? Does your growth increase just a little bit? Are you hitting your goals? Those are all questions to ask yourself. And it is very smart to take the end goal and back it out. I back everything out. I start with where I want to be, maybe a year from now or maybe 5 years from now, however far you like to plan. And then what are the steps I need to take to get there? Sometimes it's literally adding products. Sometimes it's modifying, the buyer's process. Pardon me. Sometimes it's giving them more options, like payment options. Sometimes it's very simple. It's just sometimes payment providers don't offer a wide breadth of solutions, like they don't offer wallets. Adding a wallet can increase your revenue, right? Like it's a very simple thing, but it can increase revenue. So it literally is two things. Figure out where you want to go and back it out. And then does the provider you have or the ones you're considering offer what you need?
I love it. And the upsells, cross sells, that was something that I didn't even think about when thinking about the topic of payment providers, but it certainly makes sense. If you offer a monthly subscription to somebody, you're going to need to be making charges on a monthly basis. And so,
right.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about managing risk. Now, payment holds and chargebacks are nightmares for a lot of entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. What steps can companies take to minimize these risks and build a more resilient system?
Of course, the first thing, as we highlighted a little bit earlier, was have your own merchant account so that you have control over it. It's not based on what happens in the industry. It does small but important things like make sure that your name, your business name, presents on your customer statement. Right? Instead of not being the merchant of record, you want to be the merchant of record. That will eliminate a portion of chargebacks for most people right there. That very simple thing. There is also some good advice to be had about making sure you have proper disclaimers on your site, that your refund policy is clear and easily understood and easily found on your website. Some very simple things that any educated team can help you walk through, right? But again, that boils down to choosing the right partner that you can ask questions of and that they can educate you in a smart way and give you some advice about, okay, Mr. Merchant, I'm looking at your site. I can't really find a refund policy, or I can't find a support number or a contact number. All of those things are what feed into chargebacks. Folks get irritated when they have a problem and they can't find a phone number, right? Like, just tell me who to call. But if they can't find a phone number, what other choice do they have? And immediately they go to, well, I'm just going to call my bank and not pay for it, right? I can't get resolution any other way. Or they're like, well, I don't know if I can send this back. Let me find out. And they go to your site and there's no information to be had, right? So any good payment provider will be able to help any merchant with some smart advice about how to be clear in your communication to your merchant, and then frankly also how to handle chargebacks if they happen. Just because a chargeback happens, it begins as an alert, right? It doesn't mean that it has to become a full chargeback, but the merchant has to pay attention to it. And often, frankly, they don't. And then because they didn't respond, the card brands say you have X amount of time to respond and you've fallen outside that window. So poof, it becomes a chargeback and now you have no recourse and it is what it is, right? Mm-hmm. So, there's two sides to the coin. You have to communicate effectively with your merchant, and also you have to be a little bit proactive and or have some tools on the back end that should be integrated with your partner to help you with those things.
Okay. That's really, really, really helpful. What trends are you seeing right now, specifically in e-commerce and online payments?
Wow. This industry moves almost as fast as technology. And of course, AI is driving everything, right? And we are not immune to that. So today, my answer will be what it is, but it might be different tomorrow, to be honest. So industry trends mostly are being able to add different kinds of payments, like the very simple being the wallets. Think about things just outside of your standard Visa, MasterCard, Discover, Amex, ways to be paid. I am seeing a lot of merchants add different product suites to their portfolio. So for instance, subscriptions or memberships, right? Being able to disseminate their information differently. Oh my gosh, trends. There are so many. There are a lot of very interesting emerging markets. So information products are one. Folks are really finding value in communicating their experiences and their thoughts. Think about content creators and influencers and, folks who have a breadth of experience in some way, wanting to be able to monetize conveying that information on. So there are interesting emerging markets coming into play in some big ways. I literally could probably go on for an hour, David, about about the trends, but I would say probably those are the most significant.
Okay. Within e-commerce, there seems to be some different camps of you've got your Shopify people that have a Shopify store. WooCommerce is always part of the conversation. And let's just talk about these two primary groups. What for somebody with a Shopify store? Are there any special, because they kind of own the checkout process? Am I correct? Can you talk a little bit about that?
They do and they don't. They resell what they call Shopify Payments, which sits underneath an aggregator. And then there are a number of folks like us who are integrated with Shopify that can process on your behalf just as beautifully. So, there are actually more options than you might think. And there are a number of folks that are integrated with both, including many, many more. We are a good example of that. We have 250 plus integrations, right? So unless it is a shopping cart that, your brother made or, your cousin, likely we're integrated, and we're not the only ones, of course. So my best advice there is to always check out all of your options, right? It takes 10 minutes, 15 minutes. There's never an obligation until you've executed a contract, and just educate yourself. I think the key to everything is being educated. Genuinely. I think that for myself as a human being as well. I try to find as much information as possible and make an educated decision. So I would suggest that is the smartest route.
I love it. To the Shopify listeners, what are some things that, because I, and myself included, you set up a Shopify store and almost by default, you're plugged into the Shopify payment processor.
Yeah.
What are some, and you had mentioned a couple things, like if you're potentially in a high risk industry, like CBD was an example.
Yeah.
What are some things that Shopify folks should be on the lookout for?
Well, because they sit under an aggregator on their payments, Shopify Payments does. If you are a merchant who has a very roller coastery type of revenue stream, like you're someone who launches a lot of products and then you have an influx of activity, that's going to be problematic, right? If you are in a high risk industry, again, back to industry behavior, that could potentially be very problematic. And high risk industries are not just what you might think of, like adult and CBD and cannabis in Canada, or what you would traditionally think of as high risk. There are also high risk industries that sort of appear low risk. For instance, furniture stores. You would think, well, you go in, you've got your card present, right? You buy your chair, you hand your card over, they run your card. All true. But you probably are not going to take delivery on that chair for 6 to 8 weeks, maybe more, right? That alone, the difference between the time you pay for your chair and the time you take delivery on your chair makes that transaction high risk. Anybody with over about $1,000 average ticket, automatically high risk, says the card brands, right? So you could be card present, people could be giving you their card all day, every day, but if your average ticket is $1,200, high risk. And so anybody in the high risk space, the aggregators are just not friendly. They genuinely do not want that risk portfolio under their one merchant account, right? And they do monitor and they do keep an eye on things like, the ebbs and flows of volume, or an increase in chargebacks, or an increase in refunds, or, any anomaly behavior. And so anybody who sits under an aggregator has that risk inherently. And frankly, a lot of folks don't know that. That's the problem, is that they just don't know. If you are a merchant and you're aware and you want to take that risk anyway, by all means, it's your business, literally and figuratively. And I would never, tell someone how to run their business. But it is smart to know if you don't, right? And then maybe if you're in a high risk industry, it would likely be smart to look for some options.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you shared the story of the plumber, and I'm curious, can you share any other stories about businesses that you've worked with that were struggling or had a significant event like that, and then switched over to Easy Pay Direct, and that changed their trajectory?
Yeah, there's another one that stands out, but for a completely different reason. They were a retail business, so card present. All their customers are handing over their cards. And we did a rate review, and I don't normally, honestly, I really dislike selling on rate. I would rather sell on value, because especially at Easy Pay Direct, which is part of why I came here, we have such a strong value prop outside of rate. But in any event, we had already discussed those things. They sent their statement, taken a look at it, and they were at I almost fell out of my chair. They were at a staggering 5.5% all in. So when you add up all their fees divided by their volume, it was like 5.51%. I couldn't call them back fast enough and just say, did you know that you were paying better than 5% for your merchant services? And, look, I know business owner behavior, and I know that they know what they do, and that doesn't necessarily mean they know how to run a business, right? And they had been with this provider for a handful of years, and back in the day, they gave them the best rate. Oh, it's the best rate. And so they're, great, that's what I want. Sign me up. So they did. And, God love them. You walk into the, CEO's office and say, can I have a merchant statement? And he goes, sure. And he opens the drawer and rifles through the envelopes that aren't even opened, right? Uh-huh. And so he provides statements to us, 5.5%. I said, you should literally be about half of that. I mean, literally about half of that for a card present environment at his ticket level. And I remember, and this is what stands out to me. He literally did this. And then he just stared at me for a moment. And I thought, yeah, that's probably how I would feel too, right? So keep merchants. If you hear nothing else I say, pay attention to your merchant services for a number of reasons. Is it helping you grow your business? Is it just costing you money? Is it costing you too much money? And how do you know, right? And the how do you know is to check out some other providers, get their feedback, ask them questions, and see where they compare to one another.
Okay. This may seem like a silly question, but I'm sure I'm not the only one with it. How do you check? How do you check what your rate is?
Well, look, I'm good at math and I'm happy to do that. But in essence, you take your total fees and you divide it by your volume. And that is what you're paying in fees. That's the percentage you're paying in fees.
Okay. So you would you would look at all of your sales,
Mm-hmm.
and then you would compare that to the number that's deposited into your account.
Nope. You would take your fees, so your total fees.
Okay.
Like if you paid $100 a month in fees against $1,000 a month in volume, you're paying 10%, right?
Uh-huh.
So you take your fees and divide it by your volume, and whatever percent that ends up, that all in is what you're paying for your merchant services.
Got it. The thing that I'm curious about is oftentimes the fees are withheld out of your payments, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
So it wouldn't be something that you're cutting a check for every month. It's kind of one of those sneaky expenses. So I guess would you just need to dig in with whatever payment processor you're looking at and see what the fees are?
Well, they should be providing you some reporting, right?
Okay.
So that your statement rolls up at the end of the month. Even if they take fees daily, your statement should roll up at the end of the month and say, this month, this is what you paid in fees and this was your volume, which is the information you need to figure that out. Or you can spot check, look at some days where you had a little bit of volume and do the same math, right? If they took $8 in fees against $100 in volume, right? You're paying 8%. If they took $150 against $1,000 in volume, you're paying 15. So maybe just do some spot checks on a low day and a really high day. And they should be somewhere very close to each other in percentage. It shouldn't be a wild, all over the place sort of calculation. But you can get those numbers however you're comfortable. The question is, when you get those numbers, are they reasonable? And if not, what are you going to do about it?
Right. Well, very good. Well, Lissa, this has been a really, really informative interview. Before we go to the fire round, what's the sweet spot for Easy Pay Direct? What's the typical customer avatar, and who are you guys typically a really good fit for?
We are a tremendous fit for e-commerce. Partly because we have all the integrations in place, partly because we underwrite merchant accounts from the very beginning. You get your very own merchant account. We are not an aggregator, which, offers merchants a tremendous amount of safety, right, in terms of cash flow. We are very smart about our customer experience and hand-holding through not only the application process and the approval process, but also the activation process and then beyond, because we monitor merchant accounts and we will set you up with what we call a payment optimization plan. So we will check in formal intervals and look at your processing and say, are you being efficient? Are you doing the smartest things you can do to keep yourself at the best rate, to keep cash flow positive, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of things we look at. And so our sweet spot is any e-com merchant, regardless of risk, but we certainly do have a tremendous amount of business in the high risk space. but e-com is our jam. And so if you are, we do have a book of retail business for sure. And usually that merchant has both, right? They have an e-com portion of their business and a retail portion. But anybody who sits squarely in e-com is an ideal Easy Pay Direct customer.
Outstanding. All right. On to the fire round. These are questions that we ask everybody at the end of the interview. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right. What is your favorite book?
Orlando by Virginia Woolf.
Very nice. What are your hobbies?
Well, I went to grad school for fine art. So, I like to sculpt, and I work mostly in stone and metal. That's my biggest hobby, my most time-consuming hobby.
Very cool. And final question, what is one thing that sets apart successful entrepreneurs from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
I think it is a combination of being willing to take risk, asking the right questions, or asking questions in general. It doesn't even necessarily have to start with the right questions, because sometimes we don't know where to start. That's why we don't ask, right? So taking some risk, asking questions, and then thinking about future and what you want growth to look like, and backing out what you do from there.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, Lissa, thank you so much for your time today. If people are interested in getting in touch with you, what's the best way?
Honestly, the single best way is to go to easypaydirect.com, go to our partner page, and you can literally book time with me right there.
Outstanding. Well, Lissa, thank you so much for your time today, and looking forward to staying in touch.
Thanks, David. It was lovely to chat.
Before you go, we wanted to share a new service that Ken and I have been using called Getita that has made us over $10,000 in Amazon reimbursements. The service requires no monthly subscription, and Getita collects a small percentage of the money they recover for you. It takes less than 5 minutes to set up and works on all Amazon marketplaces. Go to Getita.com, Getida.com, and enter promo code FTM400. That's FTM for Firing the Man 400 to get your first $400 in reimbursements commission free. How much money does Amazon owe you?